Playing.
Last year in 2024, Canadian Pacific Kansas City would take delivery of their first new locomotives, in the form of 100 new Tier 4 GEVOs, adding not only new locomotives to the railroad, but it was the first time that new locomotives arrived for the Canadian Pacific in over 12 years. So, to set the scene, prior to the merger, the Canadian Pacific Railway hadn't really invested in new locomotives considering the operational changes thanks to PSR, and as a result, the locomotives already rostered were enough to keep the change demand in traffic, while at the same time some locomotives were purged. The last new locomotives that arrived on the roster in 2012 were an order of General Electric ES44ACs in the 9300 series, and with the merger taking place in 2023, the amount of locomotives rostered grew as a result of the multitude of KCS units arriving, which added in for a pretty welcome splash of color. But it's clear that CPKC was the only outlier for Tier 4 admissions, and that really wouldn't do. The only Tier 4 locomotives that were rostered at the time were the KCS Tier 4's, as even Canadian Pacific's GEVOs didn't really meet up to the Tier 4 regulations, so it's clear something had to change. The first new locomotives that weren't pre-existing locomotives receiving the new paint job occurred in mid-2024, when 33 Tier 4 GEVOs arrived on the roster, hailing from not only General Electric's test fleet, but 8 or so units had been built for a cancelled mining railroad that would have been in northern Canada, with all of them receiving the infamous paint scheme when they arrived on CPKCS whatever. But 33 wasn't enough, as later that year, the company placed an order for 170 ET44ACs from Wabtec, with delivery starting to take place in 2025, with the orders still continuing out even to this day, considering that Wabtec is already dealing with rebuilds at the time of construction. The units were numbered into the 7400 and 7500 series, which seems like a good middle ground with the KCS and CPR GEVOs. And aside from the obviously crap paint scheme, they were put system-wide on CPKLW or whatever it is. And nothing else noteworthy about them. The only objectively interesting locomotive of the Tier 4 bunch is number 7470. Not that one, but that is objectively better. This one, which currently wears the Strathcona logo, which represents the Lord Strathcona's regiment in the Canadian Armed Forces, which holds some historical ties due to Lord Strathcona's part in assisting with building of the Transcontinental Railway. So, at least there's some historical significance behind that sticker. In spite of the new locomotives being welcome additions from a tier admissions perspective, they aren't exactly perfect in their first year in service. Considering at the time of recording that it's now winter, you know what that means for us Canadians. Snow, cold, snow, fucking snow. And the locomotives have to deal with the harshness of Canadian winters, especially if you're up north. However, the new locomotives are allegedly reported to not deal with the winter season quite well.
Do you like the snow?
No.
Why not? Can you say snow?
The main issue is that there are claims with the air compressors on said units freezing up due to the bitter cold. Because of this, the railroad began ordering heat blankets to solve the issues, meaning the company is trying to fix the kinks of these new locomotives to make sure that they're up to the task. This, though, is not anything new with new locomotives. I mean, look at the Siemens Chargers for instance, which were known not to handle the winter conditions quite well, until Amtrak started ironing out the issues to make sure that they're up and ready for the snowy season. So it's pretty much a similar situation here. The new Tier 4s are experiencing their first winter, and with the issues present, it gives the railroad the chance to iron out the issues so that the locomotives won't suffer from further problems in revenue service. In other words, just so they don't die out in the cold. In conclusion, the new Tier 4s aren't perfect, but considering the fact that they're new with some rolling off the assembly line likely at the time of recording, the company is solving out the issues with them, and hopefully in due time, they can perform to their full advantage as the next generation of motive power for one of the historical, but dumbest named railroad mergers in railroading history, the Canadian Pacific Kentucky Fried Chicken. The Canadian Pacific Kansas City. God, that is still a stupid name.